You'll be able to see yourselves the whole time. I hope.
Yeah. Okay. Ready? Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bob Allen, president of Green Mountain College.
And I'm Lori Martin. I'm vice president of college advancement.
So welcome. I'm going to check a count here. Last I looked, we had about 145 people, I believe, online. As I look around the room here, I think we probably have probably 25 people, alums in the room. We're in Booth Lounge, by the way, in Withy. We have about 25 people in the room. I asked a few. We have graduations from 1964 to 2018, so we have a real kind of wide range of GMC graduates in the room. We are obviously more than encouraging. This is not just a presentation. I really want to get questions, and we will take your questions as you are listening. And as questions come up, please send them in. Our technology is a little primitive here, so we're gonna have to write down the questions, and then I'll respond to them as I can. But I wanted to start, and a couple of housekeeping things. One is that we have about 45 minutes. I have two calls following this, one right after this with parents for about an hour, and also with graduate students who haven't had, they know about the closing of the college, but they haven't had the opportunity to hear from me and to ask questions. So we have, and I just came from a student meeting, so we've got them back to back. So we have about 45 minutes today, but we have another scheduled, as I think you all know, for February 7th at the same time, 4:30. And Lori and I have just been speaking about, we don't have a date yet, but we'll schedule another chat time, same format, and it'll be after 4:30. It'll probably be 5:30 or later so that all can participate. So I'm going to spend a few minutes telling you how we got to the place that we got to a few days ago, which was this past Wednesday. And certainly I think you can understand and appreciate it was not a place that I wanted to get to. Many of you probably, at least in the room, and some of you online know I've been at the college 2.5 years, so this is my 3rd year as the president of the college. And when I started, I knew there were challenges, not just at Green Mountain College, but at colleges, particularly small liberal arts colleges in rural areas. There have been challenges for a very long time. So I knew that when I came on. In addition, in Vermont and in New England, we have had declining high school graduation rates, declining birth rates for many years, for 10 years or more, and that's projected to go at least 10 years into the future. So you may or may not know that, and some of you are all over the country and may have come from all over the country, but most college students go to college within 150 miles of where they grew up. So we draw principally from New England and the Northeast. We go down as far as New York. We're pretty heavy in New York State. Much beyond that, we pick up smatterings of states, but most come from the Northeast. So with that declining population came a significant drop in enrollment. And I don't know what the enrollment was when any of you were here, but I speculate that in almost all cases, it was more than we have today. Our most recent numbers, so for the last 10 years, about 10 years ago, Green Mountain College had 775 undergraduate students. And when we started this academic year, which is started this past September, we started with 427. So that's a drop over 10 years of 45% in undergraduate students, and obviously a drop of in tuition as well. We are there are a lot of us in this category, but we're in the category of small, tuition-dependent, low endowment institutions. So to give you an idea, you know, we also are in the position of having to dramatically discount our tuition in order to attract students. So this past year's, in addition to, so this past September, we had targeted 200 first-year students, and that would be freshman students and transfer students. We had targeted 200. We were on track for that. And about May 1st, it seemed like the enrollment dropped off a cliff. So instead of enrolling 200 students, first-year students this fall, we enrolled 148. So that drop in enrollment alone was more than $1 million in net revenue that Green Mountain College never saw. In addition to that, to attract those 148 students, remember that was probably a third less than we had planned, we had to increase our discount rate. So our discount rate has been going up for many years. We had anticipated a discount rate of, overall discount rate of 61% this year, and it came in at 67%. So that additional 6% in the discount rate also dropped revenue that the college expected and had budgeted for by another $1 million. So this, and by the way, the discount rate for incoming students, just the students that enrolled either as freshmen or as transfer students this year, climbed all the way to 70%, which is really unsustainable. So I'll go back just for a moment. I'll go back for a couple of years till from when I started in 2016. So for the 2016-17 year, we had budgeted, again, before I got here, so it's by my predecessor, we had budgeted for a 210 first-year students. And when I arrived, the numbers didn't look very good. In reality, we enrolled 160. So we were 50 students short that year as well. And that resulted in what I anticipated was a balanced budget, wound up being a shortfall of about $2.5 million. 2018, again, we budgeted for 200 students, brought in 147. 2019, we again budgeted 200. We thought this was achievable. Again, we hit 147. Interestingly, this year is the first year in 10 years where our undergraduate enrollment has not dropped. So we actually stabilized enrollment at 147, but clearly not enough to sustain the college. In addition to that, our fundraising efforts have fallen short in the last, particularly last year. So in 2017, the first year I was here at the college, we had a budget of $1.4 million. We raised $1.2 million, so we were off by about $200,000. This past year, again, we budgeted $1.2 million. We were only able to raise about half that. We raised less than $600,000. 2019, in the original budget for this year, we're in this fiscal year and academic year, we had budgeted $1.2 million. And when in reality, we discovered we only raised $600,000, I had to take $600,000 out of the budget for 2019. So the combination of all of those and the budget deficit that we had when I arrived here 3 years ago, our current deficits are from tuition income, essentially all income, which by the way includes our graduate income, to was about $13.5 million, and our operating expenses are about $18.5 million. So for this year, we had projected, and we in fact will have a $5 million gap between revenue and expenses. I'm sure a lot of folks in business in the room, I know some of you are, again, not sustainable. And we do not raise, as I said, the college has historically only been able to raise about $500,000 each year. We have had years where we've raised more, but that's been almost exclusively in years where we've had a bequest. Someone died. And in the year where we raised the $1.2 million, we did get a $400,000 bequest. So in reality, from all of you and from friends of the college, we raised about $800,000 in 2016. So again, the combination of all those put us with a $5 million deficit, which clearly is not sustainable. Most colleges or colleges who have large endowments have the luxury of either being able to take money directly from their endowment or the earnings of their endowment. Green Mountain College only has a $2.9 million endowment. So the earnings from that endowment, we roughly take out about 5%, is $150,000. So we have a huge gap between what we take in tuition revenue, what we're able to get in donations, from again, all of you and friends of the college every year, and what we're able to take from the endowment. So clearly not sustainable. So the steps that we took and as an institution started 3 years ago. So the first year I got here, again, the 2016, 2017, we were able to reduce our overall expenses by about $500,000. We are, this college, and probably when all of you were here, has always run very thin. We've never had excess staff. We've never had either faculty or staff. We've run very thin, but we were able to get about $500,000 or $600,000 out of expenses in that first year. Again, not enough to sustain us. The first summer, at the end of the first year when I arrived, so that this would be the summer of 2017, I really started on a real effort, a real campaign, actually, to find a partner or partners for Green Mountain College. It became clear that we were going to have a great difficulty sustaining ourselves as a standalone institution. I approached very directly, I approached 6 colleges. 3 were pretty much not interested in partnering, and 3, starting back in the summer of this past year, summer of 17, 3 of the colleges expressed serious interest in partnering with Green Mountain College. I can't tell you who those institutions were, but I can assure you that the presidents of the college and the senior management, the senior team, were very interested in partnering. So what would that have meant? Well, by combining with another institution, let's say roughly the size of Green Mountain College, Mary Alma, who's in the audience, our chief financial officer, and our provost, Tom Mospew, and I calculated that we could cut roughly $5 million out of our operating expenses, so enough to cover the deficit. Had we been able to secure a partnership that could, in fact, cut $5 million out of operating expenses, it would have been sustainable. Candidly, I had 3 very serious and came very close to signing a deal with one of the institutions, but in the end, the boards of directors would not sign on. They weren't willing to take any more risks than they were already assuming. So those conversations were happening weeks ago, not months ago. So the reason that and I'll give you another reason in a minute that the decision was delayed until this past Wednesday is those conversations were still happening. And in addition, starting in the fall, led by a couple of our faculty members, there was a working group that was looking at how we could restructure Green Mountain College so that we could live within our means. You know, in other words, and it's pretty dramatic. So the last proposal that was presented to the board about a week ago modeled an institution of 300 students, 18 faculty. We're currently at 40 faculty. So 300 students and 18 faculty. The budget gap was still somewhere between $1.5 million and $2 million. Again, still not sustainable, and with great pain. In other words, we would have lost more than 50% of our faculty, definitely more than 50% of our staff, and we would have had a pretty quiet campus. In the 3 years I've been here, we've been about the same. We've been somewhere between 430 and 450 students, and it's still too quiet. This campus really would be operationally, break even at about 600 students, and what I've been describing as flourishing at 800 students. We didn't have the time or the money to get to the 600 students, and certainly not to the 800 students. Hence, the board, this past Wednesday, the Board of Trustees, we don't have any trustees in the room today. We had about half of the trustees in the room on Wednesday, made a decision to close the college at the end of this spring term. The gap, the financial gap, and the inability to create or to secure a partnership was really the primary reason. The reason why we are all here, probably the reason why you all came here, still exists. The mission of this college is really important and should be continued. One of the things, and I'll probably go to questions in a moment, but one of the things I'll explain to you what we are doing going forward so that the legacy of Green Mountain College, if not the campus, can continue. We have a college one of the founding colleges in the Eco League. From when some of you were here, there probably wasn't an Eco League, but the Eco League is a consortium of 6 colleges, all with a very somewhat different missions, but a sustainability mission, excuse me. So one of the founding colleges in the Eco League is Prescott College out of Arizona. I don't know if anybody in the room here is familiar with Prescott. Again, strong sustainability mission, small college. It's in a small town, although much larger than Pulteney, but in a small town in Arizona. We've designated Prescott College as our preferred partner in the teach-out. So what does a preferred partner mean? One, it means that they do want to continue the Green Mountain College legacy. They will create a Green Mountain School or Institute of Sustainability on their campus in Arizona. They have agreed to accept all of our students in good standing, which is important. They're accepting all of their students' credits, which doesn't always happen if any of you have ever transferred. They're accepting all the credits, and probably most importantly to parents and students who, as I said, earlier I'm going to be speaking with in an hour or so, they have committed to, as best they can, to duplicate their financial packages. So all of our students will leave here with the knowledge that they should be able to complete their degrees on time and within their original budget. I think I will stop there and maybe start. I know Annie here has been writing down some questions, but I'll start with perhaps one of the first questions.
Got a few windows.
So the first question is what efforts did the board and the trustees make on of the financial distress? So I've been working with, essentially most of the people that are still on the board. I think maybe all of the people that are on the board were on when I came 3 years ago. So they have been working along with the administration to help us, define some of the issues that we needed to solve around the partnerships. They have certainly donated money to the college. We don't have, and this is a reality, I guess. We don't have a very large board or a board with great capacity. A lot of colleges do. They have boards that have significant capacity. This board does not have a great individual capacity, nor candidly do most of our alums. I gave a talk to the graduates who we had about 30 students graduate this past December. And when I spoke to the students actually upstairs in the East Room about a month ago, I said to them that how proud I was of them that most of our graduates go to work on Main Street. They don't go to work on Wall Street. And that is true. It's a reality and something I'm very proud of. But the reality is that our alumni also have, compared to a lot of other institutions, relatively limited giving capacity. So raising $500,000 when you need $5 million is a huge challenge, and one that I would not have expected to come from alums. So yes, the board worked. This has been by the way, the board has been working for the last 3 months. We've been having weekly meetings with the board and occasionally bi-weekly meetings. So the board has worked very hard with us to try to find a solution that seemed and ultimately eluded us. And the only solution that was arrived upon, which again was just several days ago, the board vote was actually it was over in Pollock. Normally the board meets in this room. The meeting took place in Pollock on Wednesday. It was roughly at 3 o'clock on Wednesday when the board ultimately received something that restructure. By the way, as I said, the restructure that was presented to the board last Wednesday as well. And because it didn't have a funding mechanism, it did not have enough money to fund it even for 1 year, that the board ultimately decided that they needed to reject that as well. So they did not accept that proposal. Do we have any questions? Bob? Yeah.
Your definition of the word closed. For example, next winter, how about your heating systems in the building? Or in the summertime, how about landscaping? And how about security, so all the windows aren't broken by vandals? Yeah,
so I can only answer what I think will happen, Bob, because when we close the college, and it's anticipated that we will close by June 30th. So commencement is on May 18th. It is anticipated we'll close on June 30th. We will likely not be the owners of this property. We have two major lenders. Our principal lender is the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture will likely take possession of the college or of the property. I can't promise, and of course I don't work for the Department of Agriculture, so I can't promise what they will do. If I were the lender, I would ensure that the property was well cared for. They would have a vested interest in keeping the property up because they're going to be looking for a buyer of the property. Did I get all your questions? So that, landscaping.
So landscaping, again, like the heating system.
Yeah, I mean, candidly, they could choose not to heat these buildings. It would not be very smart. They could choose not to do that because by not heating them, they would, as you know, and I think probably everybody in the room knows, they'll deteriorate very rapidly.
Yeah, and you don't really know if they'll have higher security to just walk around the campus throughout the day or throughout the evening?
Throughout the evening.
So you don't
Same
really-
answer I don't have, but if
USDA
my
would
recommendation
want it
would be to
look
have
nice.
security,
Yeah,
because once again, you're protecting a very valuable asset.
sure.
This asset has been appraised, public, information at $20 million. So we have 450,000 square feet of buildings, and it was appraised at about $20 million.
And Bob, I would add, at this time, we can't even get questions responded to because USDA they're not in their offices.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Lori. So I contacted the USDA the night of the decision, as well as our other lender, and I wasn't surprised, but because I got no response. As you know, they are furloughed. I did see something online today that perhaps our government is going to open up again. I wouldn't count on that. But perhaps our government is going to open up again. But even when they open up, it's highly likely they're going to be tremendously backed up. So, but the USDA is aware of, well, at least they were informed. I don't know if they're aware of the situation. And I will tell you, I've been in touch with the USDA ever since I got here, because I initially, to secure the loan, the loan was only secured last April. I happen to know the date. It was April 11th of 2017 that we secured the loan with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So they've been cooperative, they've been responsive. So I think they would be a responsible owner of this property should that happen. And I will add, and this has not gone very far. We actually, I really can't go any further than that because, if somebody were, I think the lender or even the college at this point in time would entertain an opportunity to sell this campus to an appropriate buyer. Yes.
When partnerships were being explored, did the board look out and yourself look outside of the Eagle League, such as locally with colleges in our immediate area, with UVM, with the state consortium, with northern universities? Is that considered at all?
Yes.
I understand for a private college, and that's a state related establishment.
Yep,
But
both.
I can't imagine our Department of Education would let another institution in our state go under without trying to help.
Yeah, the Department of Ed, believe it or not, has very little to do with it because the Department of Ed is actually K-12 education, but the Agency of Education, which,
That's what I mean.
yeah, well, the agency also is principally K-12 education. I'll tell you some of the efforts, yes. I mean, actually the partnership with Prescott, I believe, and I have to look at the list, Prescott may be I did pursue the actual partnership with Prescott, which did not get very far. And when I say partnership, all of the partnership agreements that I was ready to sign involved keeping this campus open. Prescott never entertained keeping the Poultney campus open. But I did meet with 3 other colleges, none of which are in the Eco League, 2 of which are out of state. No, sorry, 1 of which is out of state, 2 are in state, that all of which considered continuing to operate the Poultney campus. So we didn't strictly look at the Eco League. We looked outside the state. We had to look for, principally, we wanted to find institutions that had a common mission with GMC. And so that restricts it pretty big time.
I understand that, but were those deals not?
The debt that we carry was seen as too large a risk.
Okay.
Yeah, principally, so there were two reasons. Lori identified one, that we have $21.5 million in outstanding debt, really essentially bank debt, most of it with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And with the exception of the 3 that I got a long way down the road before it ultimately did not consummate, a deal, all 3 considered keeping this campus open. Every other college I talked to would not consider keeping the campus open.
Just to go back to her question though, was the state colleges part of that conversation?
Yeah, I'm not at liberty to talk about it because I just can't, because I'm under sort of confidentiality agreements. Did I consider the public system in the state of Vermont? Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
Were other arrangements with local establishments such as mental health institutions across the state considered, where you can operate on a smaller student scale, like you were saying, with a pared down faculty, combined with say, developmental services for people who are in need, where part of the campus could be repurposed, at the same time conducting.
Yeah, what we did not consider mental health, but one of the things that was considered and actively discussed for a period of time was senior. In other words, a senior, a retirement, designating one of our dorms for seniors and having them as part of the GMC community. Once again, did not get very far. Part of the challenge that we have is our rural location. We are almost by anyone's definition, this is a rural place. I mean, Vermont, as you probably know, is one of the most, by the definition, and I think the definition is the percentage of towns of 2,500 or less, and we are, I think, at one time we were the most rural. So we did consider, and I think my guess is that when Green Mountain College closes, all of those other options will be on the table. I think I should take some of the from the. So how much, the question is, how much fundraising would it take to run another year, and is there a chance? So I'll address the first one first. You guys can tell me about perhaps about the second one. So there are two questions. Another year is in a sense problematic, in the sense that if we could only raise enough money for one more year, I'm not sure it would be a wise thing to do, quite frankly, unless there was a plan that really saw Green Mountain College going beyond a year. So I talked about a $5 million deficit. I think that's at a minimum, and probably today that number is, since we've announced closure, you have to understand that when we announced it went everywhere. I mean, I got calls from college presidents on the other side of the country, from California, wanting our students. By the way, our students are in great demand. I'm sure you're probably not surprised. I would say that number is probably the other side of $10 million now. So it would probably take, and if I really wanted a secure future for Green Mountain College, and by the way, this is not, something came across my desk today that there might have been a group that was interested in sort of buying out Green Mountain College's debt. That's not what I would do. If we took away the debt, let's say we had no debt, right? We took away $21.5 million in debt. That would still leave us with so our debt service right now is about probably $700,000 a year. So with a $5 million gap, you take away $700,000 in debt service, we'd still have a $4.2 million deficit. So if we were to raise, if you all or everyone, if we were to raise $20+ million, would it be worth a shot at keeping the college open? Absolutely. That is an enormous, it would be a drop in the bucket. Never had $1 million donor. The largest donation in the 3 years I've been here has been $100,000. So to get to 20 million, it would take a tremendous, tremendous effort, or an individual or individuals willing to donate a tremendous amount to an institution that, at least to my knowledge, they don't have a connection with yet. So another, any backup follow-up? Yeah.
I'm just curious about you're talking about that, but as a tuition-driven college, what kind of strategies were actually being used, we'll say a year ago or 2 years ago, during that decline? Because tuition-driven, the money wasn't coming in. So what could have been done? So
what we did the very first year I was here, the very first summer, the board, the trustees and I, and the administration at the time explored lowering our tuition dramatically to get it on. Our tuition currently is over $36,000. But as I said, when you discount it 70%, you really don't have a $36,000 tuition. So we looked at lowering our tuition. A couple of colleges had recently done that, some successfully, some very unsuccessfully. So what happened is there was a number of colleges lowered their tuition, assumed they would attract more students and a different group of students. In reality, the net tuition they received the next year was lower. So they still had to continue to discount. So we made a decision at the time to keep, we haven't raised, one of the strategies was not to raise tuition, and also to hold tuition for any entering students for the entire time they were here. That was an important decision. When I got here, our retention, the first year I was here, one of the other things happened the first year I arrived, is our retention rate for the freshman class when I arrived was 55%. So we lost 45% of that freshman class. So that sophomore class, which is now our senior class, I think it's our senior class, dropped by 45%. Principally, I believe that what has been happening with our retention at the college. We were raising rates about 5% a year, pretty consistently, which is actually, candidly, what most colleges do. They've been raising rates for years, about 5% a year. 45% of our students are from low-income families. So and we know that because they're eligible for Pell Grants. For those of you in higher ed, the Pell Grants are funded based on family income. So we know that 45% of our students, by and large, struggle. So if they come in at a particular financial package and we raise their tuition 5% every year, by the end, we had a high attrition rate, so a low retention rate, even for our junior and senior classes, because they got to the point where they simply couldn't afford the tuition anymore. So a couple of strategies: keep tuition at the same level, and guarantee tuition for 4 years, as long as at the time you stayed at Green Mountain College. And unfortunately, it was to aggressively discount tuition to get students in. You're welcome. Yes, and then I'll go to a question from the group.
Thank you. So moving forward, the decision's been made to close. USDA probably the likely group to take the property over.
Correct.
When you close in May, you're walking away. I'm just wondering.
No, we won't. But yeah, we won't be walking away in May.
I'm wondering about the community as a whole, not just the college, but the impact on the local community is going to be enormous between your faculty and staff that live here and the businesses that rely on the population from the college and the jobs that people have. And I think outreach to town manager and the town is really important, whether it's from whoever's left or USDA, to try to get some economic development to come in. Because the impact is huge. And I did read something in the paper where somebody was quoted yesterday of saying that the townspeople didn't realize. I think the townspeople are very aware. This college has been here for 158 years. It was originally the high school. I think that people who live here are very aware of the impact of the college. They've seen it ebb and flow over the years and recreate itself and recreate its program when it's gone through a slow period. So I'm wondering what staff may be left. Are you here to help encourage outreach, or should the town reach out to USDA when they decide they're coming back? Or
yeah, good question. Let me just go back to the impact issue, and I have been aware. I live in a small, as you know, I don't live in town, but I live in a small town, and I know what our economic impact on this town is huge. Obviously, with a large, and I will extend that to New York State, to across the border as well. We're in the education business of educating young people, but we're also in the economic development business. And one of the hardest parts for me, making that announcement the other day was our students will do fine. They're young, they have few attachments. Some are married, some are, but for the most part, our students will do fine. I've been acutely aware of what this will do to this community and to our faculty and staff, and it has been my primary concern. The unfortunate part, and that's why I worked so hard to get a partnership that would keep this campus open, even at a smaller and at a reduced sort of level, but to keep this campus open. We had models, so I think I mentioned earlier, where we'd be down to 18 faculty instead of 40, but 18 faculty and 30 staff on this campus would be a lot better than 0. I have, just so you know, or very early in the process of the partnership discussion, because I was talking to Vermont institutions, I met with the governor. I met in the governor's office I had a 45-minute meeting with the governor, presented the case. Candidly, didn't get much support. So that's true. So I've met with the governor, I've met with other state representatives, and I tried desperately to keep both the jobs and the institution in this community in the state of Vermont, and it did not. And I worked on that for months, and it didn't work. I reached out to town manager the other day, Paul Donaldson. I've spoken to Patty McCoy, so they certainly are aware of what's going on. I didn't reach out to Patty or Paul earlier. Candidly, it probably would have been anything. I'd already been to the governor's office. I didn't think they would be able to affect any kind of change that would have made the decision any different than it was.
Just to be aware of it. I mean, I think the writing's been on the wall for a while, but to be aware of it, because I do know the town office has been bombarded with phone calls, and you're like, read the paper. You know, they have nothing to say. They have no clue. And so I think communication moving forward is going to be really important.
I totally agree. And communication now can be totally transparent. It couldn't be before. I had institutions that wouldn't allow me to release their name. And we had discussions that couldn't be public. They just couldn't. But going forward, I totally agree with you that now that a decision is made, and it's the unfortunate decision that we will close the college, that we can be totally transparent. And I'm happy to work with anybody. So you said we're not closing up on May 19th, although the vast majority of our staff will be gone right just following graduation. We will have buildings and ground staff, so hopefully we won't be heating the buildings in May, but we will be cutting the grass and maintaining the campus until we no longer own the property. And my best estimate is that date will be June 30th. So in terms of planning, and I will work with anyone that wants to talk about opportunities to repurpose this campus. Ideally, you know, I'm working with one particular broker, it's an international broker, who has several colleges who are from, and again, can't identify them, but from outside the country who'd be interested in having a U.S. campus. That conversation will not stop. In fact, now it will pick up because that is an option. So I'm going to go to a couple of the questions here. What would happen for students who haven't received their degrees because they still owe money? So this is a very difficult question. We do have students who leave owing us money. It is the policy of the college, and we will probably continue that we do not release transcripts unless all funds have been paid to the college. My guess is that will continue. This is not a new issue at the college. I'm working with one student who's moved back to his home country of Bangladesh and trying to work out. But we do work with students, so we are small and we are a family, so we will work with students. But we also have creditors to pay, and candidly, it would be probably better if they paid us because my guess is in any agreement we have with a creditor, they will get that's money that's owed to the college, and they will be charged with collecting that money. So either way, the students are going to be required to make their payments, the full payments to the college. I'm going to go. I've got a lot of questions here. So what if? Oh no, sorry, that's an old one. Well, this is an important one, obviously certainly for all alums. Will alums have access to their transcripts? Yes. So between now and, again, best date, June 30th, and it probably will be June 30th, you just apply it. I mean, you can go online and get your transcript. You get it.
That. If you go to the GMC alumni pages, there is a tab for alumni resources. You can click on a link and go directly to a page that allows you to access your transcripts.
So will our degrees be valid obviously after the college closes? Absolutely. We actually currently are a fully accredited institution until 2025. Now, that will change later this year, but we are a fully accredited institution. By the way, the New England Council on Higher Education, who accredits Green Mountain College and every other college, their only issue with us, and quite frankly, anybody's only issue with us is our finances. It has nothing to do with the quality of what we deliver or how we deliver our programs. So yes, your degrees and any degrees that we grant until we close the college will be valid. This is again an important one. I kind of addressed this one earlier. Can alums propose an alternative plan? An alternative plan without a substantial commitment of funds. I mean, I'll present anything to the board, but I think the reality is that without a substantial commitment of funds, it's going to fall short. Jamie, yeah.
That, I've been talking with a lot of the alums that have those financial concerns and do think that something can happen. I think it would help greatly if there was some transparency with the financial documents, at least whatever you can provide, now that you can be transparent, so that they can review for themselves and come to the same conclusion I'm sure that your board did. Yeah,
the most recent document, and I guess we can probably, it hasn't been released yet, but it has actually just approved by the board on Wednesday, is the current 990. So we can release that.
The auditor sent it in yesterday, so it should be available publicly anytime now. Thank you.
And you won't have to, it doesn't, 990s are confusing documents. You've probably read a few. 990s are somewhat confusing, but you won't have to get past page 1 to see the challenge that faces Green Mountain College. I think, Mary Alma, give me a number. The losses in that year was $3.2 million. Change in net assets was a loss of $3.2 million.
I would add to, or caution, anyone that's been looking at Sweetbriar as a model, please know that today they are starting to run into some issues. They are experiencing donor fatigue because this commitment of finances is not just a one shot, it's a long term, because it's really a structural issue on not having sufficient tuition dollars to support what's needed to provide a good education. So really look at what they're dealing with today, not just what they did in the last few years.
And I can't remember, I've been addressing this in a couple of different meetings. Did we talk about email accounts here? Okay, so the question is, will email accounts be maintained for alums? We don't have we believe we have a solution for that, but it will not be whatever your name is at greenmountain.edu. It'll probably be that same thing at gmail.com. In other words, we believe we can switch all the accounts and to a Gmail account, but the Green Mountain, I don't know if anybody can help me when that would end, but
more than likely it will be
June 30th. Yeah, probably around June 30th. If you still use your greenmtn.edu account, we will be working to switch that over to a Gmail account. And I think I've already addressed it. It said anything we can do to save the school. So I think I addressed that. So more questions from the, oh, we have a couple here. Oh, this says need to respond to YouTube questions, which I have.
Killington School of Resort Management?
Oh, yeah, good. Killington School of Resort Management. They might not have been here when some of you were here, but we do have about just under 30 students up at Killington who reside up there and teach up there, work up there. We are working, and I can disclose this, we have teach out opportunities for those students. So if they choose, the principal one would be Paul Smith's in the Adirondacks. Some of you are probably familiar with. They were really founded as a resort and culinary school. They would be very happy to take our students, but we are working principally and really exclusively now with Castleton University. So Castleton is very interested in the Killington program. There are a couple, and I say a couple because there is more than one regulatory and even one legal issue that needs to be resolved before we could actually, before Castleton could start recruiting students to that program. We have I think we're talking pretty much daily about it, and the expectation is we'll be able to move that to Castleton, but again, subject to these regulatory issues that have not yet been resolved.
Sorry, just to clarify, the Killington School always seemed maybe a little bit self-sustaining, and same with the grad program, which I understood, I thought brought in more funding and kind of sustained itself. There was no opportunity for either of those to spin off somehow.
We looked at both opportunities. So the question was, if you didn't hear it completely, that the Killington was somewhat sustainable. It was and continues to be. With 29 students, it's barely sustainable, quite frankly. But with 45 students, which we've had as many in that program, it was sustainable. So that program is fairly easy. We hope fairly easy to move to Castleton. The graduate programs early on in the discussion, we looked at potentially spinning off the graduate programs. Problem is that there is a net revenue that comes out of the graduate program. So if we spin off the graduate programs, we also spin off the net revenue. So we would have lost net revenue for that program this year is probably it's definitely more than $1 million. So depending on what we could get for it to sell it, and we didn't really have a buyer, we would lose that net. We would lose that net revenue immediately. So even if we sold it for $2 million, within 2 years, it would be gone. So, yes.
It's more of a statement than a question, but I just feel like, it's a very unique school. I think there's a lot of very passionate alumni because it's such a unique mission, and we're pretty passionate coming in here because of the mission. And I feel like there was a real lack of transparency for all of us. I think a lot of people knew there were some financial issues, but had no idea that this was coming. And in that pool of alumni, I really feel like there could have been a lot of resources tapped into, not necessarily money, but perhaps leading to money. That really, I definitely hear the chatter amongst a lot of alumni right now that, we all kind of missed out on our chance to perhaps help more in some way because we had no idea this was coming. And I feel like I'm basically just making a statement, but I think that's probably one of the most upsetting things.
And to echo what Chris is saying, like anything that any of the alumni are asking, can we raise money? What can we do to help? It'd be great if, we could work with the college. So I know Ian is trying to keep people from doing fundraising campaigns, but
yeah, our principal need is money, right?
Yes,
and it can only, for us, it can only come in basically two forms. Well, maybe three. Lori can help me here, but students. So had we been totally transparent, in other words, this college, my colleague behind me, Tom Miles Pugh, has been here for 20 plus years. The college has had its ups and downs and struggled, and we're not alone. And virtually all, but had it been, if the word closure had ever been even discussed, who would come and enroll here? And our principal source of revenue is tuition. So, I tried to be, we as an institution tried to be as transparent, or I call it translucent, right? We couldn't be totally, I couldn't disclose to you the conversations, even within the institution, I did not disclose the colleges that we were having conversations with because I was not permitted to do that. So there had to be a certain amount of, again, translucency rather than transparency. If I thought that an appeal a month ago would have solved the problem, in other words, a fundraising appeal could have potentially solved the problem, would have done it in a heartbeat.
Well,
But
I completely understand that. Obviously this is, I think I'm speaking in terms of years, not necessarily like a month ago. But I even feel like there would have been a lot of different creative ways to actually get money from alumni that wouldn't have to be us handing over $1,000, more sustainable ways, maybe modeling something like public radio, with long-time sustainers and small amounts. And, in that sense, we have a huge pool of alumni that, would have been maybe more motivated if they knew that it was going to come to this right now.
I think what the college has taught us as alumni is to depend on our resiliency and our resourcefulness, and you've excluded us from that opportunity. And I think if there's an opportunity to do that between now and June, will you give us that opportunity to sit with like-minded individuals with our faculty and really work out, because we know that this is not just unique to us, this is a problem of higher education. So why can't we be on the forefront and try to solve that, not just for us, but maybe for other institutions?
I would be happy to work with anybody that really, if we have a realistic plan. We have, you know, I'd be totally candid. We have a lot to do between now and June. Our staff is going to start to be reduced. In other words, we're going to be reducing staff. So we would have to act very, very quickly. And
that opportunity. I think that's what we are asking for, is that opportunity. We are not a group of individuals who give up easily, sir. Not at all.
Does that, and I'm asking a legitimate question. Do you think that somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 million could be raised in the next couple of months?
I think if people across the country will pay $25 for an ounce of potato salad, I think we can find it within our community and beyond our community to raise that money.
Okay.
I think we need that platform.
If anyone in the room or a group of people in the room is willing to organize that effort and conduct that effort, yes, we will we'll support it in any way we can. Well, candidly, we won't have the resources to lead that effort. So if a group of alums wants to put together an effort, or just community members, we have a number of community members also here tonight, wants to organize and initiate that effort. I know there's a GoFundMe campaign out there that that came up yesterday. That's for $1 million. Well, you know today that $1 million is not going to do it. So that GoFundMe campaign should be probably $15 million. And that's if people want to put time and energy into that, it's wonderful. It's great. And honestly, we'll give you every bit of support we can. Yes, sir. And by the way, I just have to look at we've got about one more question because we've got a call that starts at 5:30. So.
Real estate, is it possible to sell any of the houses that are the house next to the president's house, for example?
It is not, because it's part of the security for the loan. So the only property that is not part of the security is the co-op building.
Yeah. Thank you, President Allen, for holding the meeting and subsequent meetings to come. My question is regarding your dialogue with Governor Phil Scott. Not that you should characterize the whole meeting, but I was wondering how did you approach that meeting, and how did that dialogue go?
Part of it was I must tell you, part of it was confidential, so I can't divulge that. Part of it was confidential, but I approached it from a community development standpoint. In other words, we have over 100 full-time employees just employed by Green Mountain College. If you add in our dining services and buildings and grounds, it's probably 150. The Green Mountain College payroll, when you add it all up, which includes our work-study students and things, about $9 million. So the economic impact of Green Mountain College closing on this community, the town of Poultney, across the border in Hampton, Granville, is huge. So that's the approach I took with the governor. Now, the governor's got a lot of bigger issues. So this is not a slam on the governor, but I did not get the kind of reaction that I'd hoped to get, or support that I'd hoped to get.
I'm just wondering, what do you feel is the main reason that students aren't coming here? Do you think it's because it's only that it's rural, or, what has been the decline in these years?
Rural, so the first piece is just demographics. That's just simply that there are far fewer high school graduates within 150 miles of this community, where we operate. So that's the first reason. Rural is a big part of it. There was an article today picking up on our closure. I can't remember, I think it was in Inside Higher Education, saying that students increasingly want to go to school in cities. They don't want to come to school in small towns. So that's part of it. I think our majors, our faculty are our biggest draw in our majors. So I think we ironically, in a lot of ways, we're on the cutting edge of where higher education should be. We just didn't have enough time. And we are in a difficult, there's no question we're in a difficult location to attract students.
Did GMC lose its accreditation?
No, we're fully, as of today, we are fully accredited to 2025.
Can I ask, why did the college decide to close before being asked to show cause by their accreditation agency, as it were? Whereas typically colleges will try to
show cause or show that the college has the potential for a future and then takes the same.
Again, the trustees made that decision, but I, as the administration, could not present a budget for 2019, 2020 that anyone would accept. That the gap between what we would anticipate for tuition income or just revenue, just call it revenue, and expenses was just too great. I think we're going to have to stop there. We're at 5:27.
If you have questions that have not been answered, if you send an email to alumni office at greenmountain.edu, it comes directly into my inbox, and I'm happy to chat with you, respond to you, and try to help you get your questions answered.
Yeah, and this group, as you know, we have another meeting scheduled for February 7th at 4:30, and we will schedule another meeting if needed, and I think it will be, for sometime after that, and we'll push the hour out to 5:30 to make sure we include folks who couldn't do a 4:30 meeting. So thank you all for coming. Thanks for Karen.
Other questions that didn't get answered?
How you doing?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of.
Well, Ron Coffee's home.
What's the email? So I can send it.
Sure, you can find it with cafe.
It's cute. Actually, we really have it like now.
Yeah, me too. I never been there until
I would appreciate that. You're busy for a while.
Yeah, whatever. You're still around.
I'll be around.
All right. And I
Always out. Yes, I mean, yes, very bad, and I tried, but they keep sending us progress reports.
Yeah, he called like yesterday, he said, I'm worried about calling me back. I haven't spoken, I haven't been calling. So if you talk to him, tell him like something. And I think he called because he was worried about it.
Yeah, I imagine so. I didn't want to bother him with it yet, but I knew he was going to. Yeah, I'll let him know. But yes, he is on the up and up. Well, he's taken to it well. So that's good.
Does he, well, whatever.
Yeah.
We'll get over coffee or lunch.
Any of this alumni thing that ends up happening, I guess you're going to be part of it. If it ends up happening or whatever.
So this group is parents, right?